Thank you for joining us via Zoom for our May 5th, 6 o'clock Board of Education meeting. We want to thank you all for taking the time to be a part. We have several that are actually on the Zoom and then several that are watching the live stream. And so we appreciate that. A lot of things being done just a little bit different, but there's nothing wrong with that. Doing things different isn't always a bad thing. There's always some good stuff that can come with some change. So if you are on the Zoom, you're probably muted. That means we won't be able to hear your phones ring or anything anyway. But if you are going to be unmuting yourself, make sure that you have it to where we don't have those distractions, if you would. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Centel Brown, for our Spalding County School Spotlight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It is a pleasure to always present those schools who are doing great things academically and socially. We are awarding our May Spotlight to Kennedy Road Middle School. Kennedy Road Middle School has a total of 485 scholars. Their mascot is the Cougar. There are 55 faculty and staff members there at Kennedy Road Middle School. And when we asked the principal for a quote on why he enjoys being the proud principal, Dr. Gardner said Kennedy Road Middle School faculty and staff are committed to what we have deemed as Cougar accountability. And that commitment has and will continue to change the lives of our students in a positive way, and that he is glad to be a part of it all. What are the good things that are going on at the school socially and academically? Educationally, Kennedy Road Middle School was recently recognized as a model school for their efforts to build their professional learning communities, and the school also received a huge gain from the CCRPI score from 57.3 to 71.2. This increase resulted in the school's focus on building students' progress and closing the achievement gaps in student learning. The team at Kennedy Road is working hard to build a school that the students can be proud of. Kennedy Road is also home to 2 Reach Scholars who have been awarded $10,000 in scholarships upon completion of high school. And the Cougars have hosted and placed top rewards at the first Lego League robotics competition in the past 2 years. Kennedy Road is also working to partner with the community to do more for the students and to change Kennedy so that it can change the community. Their career day brings in more than over 50 local entrepreneurs and business agencies to help students learn about the different career opportunities outside of what they see at school. The school was recognized as a Beta Club School of Merit and has built the Beta Club members from 20 members to an active 50 members. That is something that is really, really huge. I remember when I was teaching and advising the Beta Club as well. So we definitely applaud Dr. Gardner and the faculty and scholars for that. This year, their Dads and Donuts, Grades and Grandparents, and Moms and Muffins programs were a huge success. And the school is working to continue to build these programs to engage more with the community. At Kennedy Road, the push will continue to be for excellence in all areas to ensure students are well-rounded and ready for the real world. The goal is to ensure that students' lives are changed as a result of being a Cougar and taking on the responsibility to be accountable. So at this time, we would like to congratulate Kennedy Road Middle School and award them the May 2020 School Spotlight. Let's give them a hand, everybody.
Thank you so very much. And I have asked Reverend Holmes if he would lead us in prayer tonight. And then we have with us, I believe he can hear us, is Mr. Alex Monroe, an 8th grader from Kennedy Road Middle School. And Lonnie, if you'll make sure that he is unmuted after Mr. Holmes leads us in prayer, then he will lead us in our pledge. And I am just assuming, Ms. McDonald, that you will have our flag.
I will.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Holmes, thank you.
All right, let us pray. Lord God, we come first to just thank you for the many blessings that you have afforded us during these turbulent times. Father God, then we want to thank you, Lord God, for just blessing us with life as it is. And we pray, Father God, that your plans will go forward and we be accepting of your plans. Father God, we continue to pray for our city, our state, and our nation. And we pray, Father God, that we get through this pandemic, this crisis, with minimal damage. And we ask these things knowing that you can and you will. And it's in Jesus' name that we do pray. Let every heart say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Mr. Monroe, are you ready?
Yes, sir. All right, everybody, can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Monroe. That was awesome. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Brown for our school system announcements.
Chairman Dawes, thank you so much for the opportunity. Now, this little introduction may be a little longer than most of them because this is the last meeting that our seniors will have before moving on. And Nick Edgerson has been a part of this Scholar Clerk team since the beginning, and this will be his last meeting. And we also have Elizabeth Thurston who will be joining. Thank you so much for this. And many of you remember my first meeting in January of 2019. I told you about the young man who reached out to me who wanted to become more involved in the school district by taking a stance and having real impact. Through this, I was able to come to my colleagues and we would allow scholars to help with our announcements. This firsthand showed scholars the legislative and policy happenings on how the BOE, superintendent, and cabinet are working hard on their behalf. Shortly after reaching out to Nick, I met with Nick, and since that day, he has been very enthusiastic about being involved and has taken the task very serious. There's been several times throughout this entire thing where Nick has taken this opportunity and put it before others. I remember he was telling me one day that he had a very important audition in Atlanta, but he chose to come and do the announcements because that is something that he was very passionate about. I remember one meeting, it was about 5:55, and I get a phone call, and Nick says, "Mr. Brown, I'm on my way. I just left baseball practice." And so when Nick came to the boardroom, he had on his baseball uniform. It was very dirty, and some people were looking at him like, what was he doing? But it just shows his commitment, not only to his school, but to his community. And so I greatly appreciate the efforts that Nick has taken to stand up and be a leader here in Griffin. I also would like to commend Miss Elizabeth Thurston. Miss Elizabeth Thurston is a senior at Spalding High School. She will be attending Kennesaw State University in the fall, and Nick will be attending Middle Tennessee State University in the fall. Tonight, the senior class president of Spalding High School and the student body vice president will do our GSCS district announcements. Nick and Beth, have fun.
Thank you, Mr. Centel. Chairman Doss, governance team, and stakeholders. My name is Beth Thurston. I'm a senior at Spalding High School. I currently serve as the senior class president. As a graduating senior, I would like to thank the Board of Education for this opportunity to present with my friend Nick Edgerson for this evening's announcements.
Please adhere to our evening announcements. If you are not following the school system social media platforms, please do so.
If there are any stakeholders who would like to be added to the weekly communications from the superintendent and school district, please email him at jim.smith@gscs.org to be added to the distribution list.
During the month of May, we are celebrating Better Hearing and Speech.
Happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of the GSCS educators.
Wednesday, May 6th, GSCS will host a virtual job fair. If you haven't seen the Don't Rush video, please go check it via the school district's YouTube page.
The use of static and digital billboards have made their way to Griffin, Georgia. Be sure to check out the digital digital boards on North Expressway congratulating H.Z. Kelsey, Griffin's High School, and Spalding High School.
Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. The Griffin-Spalding County Board of Education virtual work session will begin at 4 p.m.
Monday, May 25th, 2020 is Memorial Day.
And Friday, May 1st, kicked off the Senior Stadium Days at Memorial Stadium. Friday 8th will be Griffith High School, and Friday 15th will be Spalding High School's senior photos from designated schools will be displayed on the Jumbotron from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. On the night listed above, the stadium will stay fully lit from 8 p.m. until 8:20 p.m.
End of the year guides for scholars, staff, and families can be found online at www.spalding.k12.georgia.us.
For a list of senior activities and graduation dates, please visit the destination graduation page of the district's main website. Mr. Doss and members of the board, that concludes my report. Our report.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Board members, we're at the point of adoption of the agenda, but I do have a few changes I want to go ahead and mention to you, and then we'll hear if there is any additional at that time. So if under section 5, 1A, we need to add 3 names. You were given this information earlier, but I just want to make sure for the record we have it added to that. And that is Caroline Parrish, teacher at Beaverbrook, Zachary Turner, a teacher at Ann Street, and Lakeisha Williams, a teacher at Griffin High School. Everybody got that? Do I need to say that again? And then the second section of 5.1b, if we would remove Bridget Orr, the clerk for College and Career Academy, and if we will also pull Mr. Byron Jones from classified and let's move him to an action item, and that will be in the action items II. And if there are not any other changes that need to be made, I would entertain a motion to accept or adopt our agenda.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to accept the agenda, consent agenda.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Wonderful. We will move then on to our recognitions, and the Griffin-Spalding County School System 2020 Star Student. I want to turn that over to Dr. Kiwanis Kennedy.
Good evening, Mr. Smith and members of the board. It gives me great pleasure to come before you tonight to recognize our STAR students and STAR teachers. The word STAR stands for Student Teacher Achievement Recognition. The Professional Association of Georgia Educators, known as PAGE, serves as the state coordinator of the STAR program. The program is in its now 62nd year and has honored more than 26,500 students and their teachers. To be named a STAR student, a high school senior must have the highest score on any single test date of the SAT taken through the November test date of their senior year and be in the top 10% or top 10 students of their class based on their grade point average. The STAR teacher is selected by the declared high school STAR student for having made the most significant contribution to their academic development. For Griffin High School, the STAR student is Phoebe Bradbury. Phoebe plans to attend Kennesaw State University to study engineering and dancing. Phoebe chose Sharon Adams as her STAR teacher. The STAR student for Spalding High School is Wesley Parton. Wesley plans to attend Georgia Tech to study mechanical engineering. Wesley chose Dr. Christopher Godat as his star teacher. The GS Star students and teachers were recognized at the Kiwanis Club luncheon on February 5th, where the District Star student was announced. The District Star student will compete for region-wide honors in the 12-star region. Region winners and their star teachers then compete for the Georgia State Star Scholarships and Awards. The District Star student and teacher are Wesley Parton with selected teacher, Dr. Christopher Godat. Please join me in celebrating our star students and star teachers for the 2019-2020 school year. Congratulations. We also want to thank the parents, family members, and friends of our star students and star teachers for all of the support that they have provided these outstanding students and teachers.
Thank you so very much. Now at this time, we'll have Mr. Smith with our Griffin-Spalding County School System staff recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to add my congratulations to our star students as well. To become a star student is almost a lifelong goal of many who achieve that. They put in a lot of work, a lot of hard work. It's not just one test, it's a lot of work over several years getting there. And I greatly appreciate what they have done to earn that recognition this year and represented us so well. And to the teachers, to Sharon and to Chris, to be named a star teacher is a singular honor. To be named as the person who has had the most impact on a student's academic career. That's a heavy recognition. And I appreciate both of you very much for being the kinds of teachers who make that impact on our students every day. So thank you very much for that. We have several recognitions, and these really are things we typically put on the announcements, but these were of just such magnitude, the weeks of appreciation. We wanted to highlight these. The week of May 4 through 8, the week we're in right now, is National Teacher Appreciation Week. And today, May the 5th, was actually National Teacher Appreciation Day. I'm not sure there's been any other day, any other time when it has been more appropriate, apropos, to recognize the impact that teachers have on students than it is right now. To have moved from an in-class model of education using technology as a piece of it, to go into online classes and to using printed packets and getting that material together has been a Herculean task that our teachers have undertaken with great grace and effectiveness. I've talked to many teachers who have set up classroom time each day. They call and make sure their kids are out of bed, ready to learn, check up on them in various ways. They've done an outstanding job. So congratulations and kudos to our teachers. Thank you for the work you do every day in our classrooms or online now, but hopefully someday back in the classroom, we'll get there. But the work you do is greatly appreciated. And I believe the way that you've undertaken your task in these crisis days is the way many of our students are going to remember you. The extra effort that you have given to show your care and concern to them. And I think they're going to appreciate that for the rest of their lives, and you for doing that. So thank you on National Teacher Appreciation Day. Tomorrow, May the 6th, is National School Nurse Day. And we have 19 outstanding school nurses who see a variety of students, faculty, family members, visitors to the building. They'll see anybody that needs their help. And they do an outstanding job keeping our students ready to stay in the classroom, or if something needs to be done, they take care of. They dispense a lot of medication when it's needed, a lot of comfort care, and the school nurses do a great job. I'm always amazed. I believe they see somewhere around 45 to 50,000 individuals in the course of a year to do something in the nurses station for them. Plus, they also will go into classrooms and lead some lessons on health topics too. So thank you to our nurses, and enjoy your day tomorrow, National School Nurse Day. This week is also School Nutrition Employee Week. And once again, being in the times that we're in, our nutrition workers have once again stepped up to the plate, so to speak, and done a great job for us. They do every day. You walk in the cafeterias and you see the meals that have been prepared, breakfast or lunch, and what's going on in there and the dedication they have. They treat it as a true calling. And if you talk to them, that's the way they look at it. So I want to congratulate our nutrition employees as well and thank them and celebrate them on School Nutrition Employee Week.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And if you will then roll right into our 2020 retirees.
You know, Mr. Chair, this is the time of the year when a lot of our focus, as has already been mentioned, goes to hiring new staff, doing job fairs, interviewing, bringing new people into our system. But we don't want to let this moment go by without recognizing those who have spent entire careers in classrooms or in some aspect of school support. And we certainly have those here in Griffin and Spalding County. And we've always tried to, have a recognition for them. And this year we have to do it a little bit different, a little bit later maybe. But I do want to recognize our system retirees today. And we have 32 this year that have announced their retirement, that we're having to replace a lot of experience, a lot of years, a lot of know-how. But I also want to thank them greatly for the work they've done with our students. So let me just read these names. Take just a moment, but I think it's important that we recognize each of these retirees and let them know how much we appreciate what they have done. We have Lynn Aiken from Spalding High School, James Henry Anderson from Spalding High School, Jenny Baggett, one of our school nurses, Rehoboth Road Middle School, Mitzi Barkus, Jackson Road Elementary School, Marcia Bass, Jordan Hill Elementary School, Karen Betts, Atkinson Elementary School, Janet Coach Borner, Kennedy Road Middle School, Norman Brousseau, Spalding High School, Linda Colquitt, Kennedy Road Middle School, Leanne Crawford, Rehoboth Road Middle School, Catherine Darden, Crescent Elementary School, Lisa Davis, Beaverbrook Elementary School, Leslie Dennison, Rehoboth Road Middle School, Daniel Driver for our Transportation Department, Larissa Ernest, Spalding High School, Sergeant J. Paul Foles, Griffin High School, JROTC, Elizabeth Folk, Special Ed with the district, Christy Hall, Cowan Elementary School, Lottie Harris, Jackson Road Elementary School, Connie Howard, Crescent Elementary School, Esperanza Jones, Spalding High School, Beth Killingsworth, Griffin Region College and Career Academy, Anita Morgan, Cowan Elementary School, Lisa Norman, Kennedy Road Middle School, Lisa Peoples, Crescent Elementary School, Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Pugh, Griffin High School, JROTC, Kay Reeves, Crescent Elementary School, Blanche Rossi, Carver Road Middle School, Kristen Smith, Spalding High School, Calvin Thompson, Calvin Road Middle School, Sherry Warwick, Beaverbrook Elementary School, Natalie Wood, retiring as principal, Crescent Elementary School. 32 outstanding individuals. I want to congratulate them and recognize them for the time they've spent working with students in our system and tell them how much we appreciate them and how much we wish them well in their future endeavors.
Yes, that is wonderful. Thank you very much. Very much. We'll take just a second. We're not going to take a break, but if those that are on the Zoom call that are getting ready to move into the business section of the meeting, and love for you to stay with us if you would like. But if you need to slip away, we understand that also. So board members, with that, I would entertain a motion for our consent agenda items.
So moved.
Mr. Chair, I think you've gone over public comments.
I'm sorry. I did not mention that we didn't have public comments. I just texted Miss Joni and she said no one had signed up, but I should have mentioned that. Thank you very much. Okay. I appreciate that. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Excuse me?
No, sir.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I think Ms. Barbara Joe has joined us by phone, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll let the record reflect that.
Mr. Chair, I did want to just point out, since we're having discussion as it relates to the consent agenda, under the resignations, continue to get worried about, every time we get this list of people that are resigning from our school district. And after speaking with, several people, it's just that it is a tremendous loss to lose a winning coach who has transformed the basketball program, who has transformed the lives of scholars, to see her go and then go into another school district. It is also woefully concerning to see other people who are resignation and being released from contracts by choice or whatever situation is. So I just want us to start looking at what we can do better as a district to just hold on to those teachers who are given so much of their time, so much of their talent, and so much of their treasure to not only our scholars, but to other faculty members and to the community. And so I mean, if there's some type of study that needs to be done, if we can look back more into our focus groups that I know we have going on with HR and some other things, just to see what we can do as a system. No system is perfect no matter where you go. But I do believe if you continue to let people speak their mind and you create that dialogue, that we as a system can do better together. And so I just wanted to put that out there and hope that we can look forward to some innovative things and not being afraid to have these conversations with excellent staff members who are leaving Griffin-Spalding, going to other places. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Brown, I think that will fall up under recruitment and retention, which is under the umbrella of HR. So that there is an avenue to address it. We just have to put more focus on it.
Yes, sir. And that's what I said in my about the focus groups that we have. And so I'm not, like I said, I talk with you a lot, leader. So any suggestions that you are willing to come up with that we can, put more attention to that, I gladly support you, Mr. Leader.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll move then on to our action items. First one is abatement of taxes for the land bank. Mr. Smith?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have another request from the Land Bank Authority to abate delinquent property taxes on, I believe it was 8 properties in a total amount of about $14,929.65. We had one of these back in January, I believe, and we also had Ms. Virginia Church come from the Land Bank Authority to talk about the Land Bank Authority operations. I believe in February she came. So this is another one where we've been asked to abate the delinquent property taxes so that the property can be sold to new owners to put back on the property rolls without the encumbrance of delinquent taxes.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Nope.
Okay, and then I would entertain a motion then to accept this amendment or the recommendation.
So moved.
I have a motion. I see Mr. Holmes waving at me. Is that a second, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, sir. I have myself muted. Yes, sir.
All right. Any discussion?
Hold on one second, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the action item, that the memo that was sent out. I think I had a question. I had marked it earlier. All right, I see it on the points of consideration. My question was already answered. Thank you.
All right. All in favor of, we have a motion and a second, so then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Ms. Barbara Joe, can you speak so I can hear you? I don't think you're muted. I just want to double check.
She's muted.
Okay. All right. Well, we will continue to work on that. So she can hear us though. All right. We will then move to the second action item that we have, and that is Mr. Byron Jones, CFO for Central Office. We had discussion about this in executive session last week, and bringing it before you now. Any questions before we Call for a vote.
There's no question. Just want to make a statement, Mr. Chair. I greatly appreciate you taking this item and putting it in its own category. I know previously, historically, there's been where the board would group everything together, and we've had a conversation in regards to how I feel in regards to the consent agenda and putting everything together. I want to thank the superintendent for doing his due diligence of sending the information over to us and having the many discussions that we could have so that I, as a board member, voting member, will be comfortable with the vote that I take. And so thank you so much for this opportunity to do this. Thanks to the superintendent for preparing the board and giving us the information that we need to make this decision.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion for this recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. We will then move into our presentations and discussions. Our monthly financial report. Mr. Ryan McLemore is still with us, so thank you for being willing to bring that to us tonight.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for replacing me.
Well, Ryan, you know everything gonna fall in your bucket, man, at least about 3 years after you gone.
This is the time where you find out all the mistakes I made. So, but I'll be gone. No, I appreciate the board's patience with me as we make this transition. So I do want to make it as smooth as possible, especially in some of the budget conversation that we're going to have after these financials. I'll quickly highlight in general, really the story hasn't changed a whole lot from a couple of weeks ago when it comes to what our stability is for the current year. The current year looks fine. We're going to be doing well because there are a number of expenditures that we effectively aren't paying by virtue of being closed, and they should far outweigh the requirement that we'll need to do a transfer to the nutrition fund. We did get the result where we have March's bottom line, where basically March did use pretty much all of the net revenues that we had up to the point. But we also had in our budget an amount transfer of $150,000 that has not been taken into consideration yet as well. So April and May are not going to be good, but I feel like the $500,000 number we were targeting is conservative, and so hopefully that will come in under. And if you look at our property tax collections combined with where we should spend less, such as water, fuel, and things, we should actually have a pretty good bit looking at possibly going into our fund balance, which will come into play in some of the conversation in a minute around the budget on how we might be looking at moving forward, given the notification memo we got on Friday, which is not good. I did just want to also point out that SPLOST collection for the retail month of March was $888,000. So you see where, while we know certain tax collections are probably going to go down a lot, to a degree they may be offset. A lot of people probably went grocery shopping in the month of March, and a lot of people still go to Home Depot. So the collection itself was actually really good. I would expect April to drop fairly significantly, though. I don't think it can outpace the loss of sales tax in a number of other areas, but that was an interesting result. So, right now we're in good shape when it comes to this year. And so I think as we get into the next conversation, we can kind of talk about what some initial thoughts are around about how we handle next year. So if you have any questions about the financials, I'll be happy to answer.
I don't have a question, Mr. Ryan, but I think you brought up a very valid point. And I oftentimes, people always kind of focus on the negative, but this time is really a blessed time for outgoing monies that we normally would spend. We, even in our personal households, we see that we're spending less because we're not out there, being able to do what we normally do. But I was just interested in knowing how much have we actually, I don't want to say save, but how much have we actually curtailed during this pandemic on our utilities and things of that nature?
Well, to get more accurate estimate, when I talked to Bruce about his budget in general, where it was heading, up until the point of where this occurred, utilities were actually running a little bit ahead of the budget. At the same time, you still have the remainder of the year. Now it can kind of flip. So to a degree, we've used probably more at the same time going through March than we had traditionally by that point in the year. But there should be pretty good savings, and we should get into six-figure type numbers. I'd leave that a little bit estimate as variable. We just got the last city bill, and honestly, it was a little higher than we expected it to be. So I know Bruce he's questioning a lot of things, and so he's going to go back with the city and take some of those line items and check to see why the numbers were the numbers that were on there. I know just fuel as an example, what we put in the write-up, where Todd basically estimated we don't go back to school, we're talking about $160,000 in the fuel line alone.
Wow.
We're saving. We were already trending under in payroll. But when you don't have substitute teacher cost remaining months, that in its own right can be anywhere from $75,000 to $90,000 a month. So there are just pockets all over. But another thing to consider is we're almost at 100% of our property tax revenue, and what's included in that was that title ad valorem tax, and we still have the month of April, May, and June left. And the reason why we're doing so well is because of that title ad valorem tax. It was doing incredible ever since the legislature changed how much came to us between the governments in July and what they kept at the state level. It was running about $800,000 ahead of the prior year. So you add on the fact that our revenues are obviously going to exceed in the local part, combined with some of the payroll cost savings, combined with the fuel, combined with just stopping purchases, we're looking at a significant amount, minus the potentially $500,000 going to nutrition. We're still looking at a significant amount that ultimately could flow through to the fund balance as we talk about the potential pretty drastic state cut that may be coming.
Oh, yeah. And I think I sent a text or email to you all. That was a topic of discussion from GSBA about holding off on hiring because of the shortage coming from the state. And we may be hiring, some system may be hiring people that they may have to furlough. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But I got one last question. I don't know if it's for you or Stephanie in HR, but how are we trending now with with insurance claims and things of that nature since we are not actually in the buildings?
So if you're talking about workers' comp in particular, I think since the start of this, for the most part, we had ongoing regular bills that were really a continuation of prior to this all happening, which were not high. I mean, the workers' comp has been low for years, really in large part due to the work of Edna and her group. It's gone very well as a budget item. I know we had one claim that I believe did pop up during this time that is an evaluation of what occurs when everybody's at home and what actually counts towards workers' comp. So they're going to have to investigate that. But for the most part, that fund still trends low, as it has really the past 2 years, if not 3. One thing we're being hit with a little bit relates to unemployment insurance. Where we have not laid anyone off, but whether or not it starts to apply to certain classifications of employees such as substitutes, the state may be viewing that differently. And so we're still trying to figure out what that actually is going to look like in terms of costs that we would bear versus what the state would bear.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Anyone else on that subject before we moved into the fiscal year 21 budget stuff? All right, Mr. Smith and Mr. McLemore.
Yeah, Ryan kind of alluded some to the budget discussions that we're having, and Mr. Holmes did too, with the information that's kind of come out here in the last few days. We were actually having a budget meeting talking about some of the requests that were coming in when the notice came out from the state that they were looking at a potential 14% cut. So that kind of changed the direction of our meeting a little bit. That was kind of a bucket of cold water, really. As Mr. McLemore has said, we've done well in fiscal 20, which may give us the ability to move some expenditures from that would have been done in 21 anyway back into 20 if we can get those taken care of and be able to use the money that we're building up in this year. But as far as looking at the 21 budget, of course, we're not in possession yet of the final state allotment sheets or the allocation of funds to school districts. The legislature, of course, adjourned or left or put on hold or whatever it is they did that day, back on crossover day when the budget passed the House and on its way to the Senate. And so that's kind of gotten stuck in midstream. And now that when they come back, there's going to be a whole different set of assumptions under it, given the economic factors that we've seen in the last couple of months. So this is why the governor has requested that all the state departments look for ways to reduce their budget by 14% over the initial fiscal 20 budget. We already put some money on hold this year during the year, and this would be enough to get to 14% total against that original. But school formula allocations, or QBE, were not touched at all. And so those were specifically mentioned in the letter that those are now back on the table, and whether those will get a full 14% cut or some amount less than that, we don't know yet. But we have to begin planning for the eventuality that we're going to get some kind of a cut that's going to feel much like we were getting back during the recession period from 2009 to 2014 or something like that, when we were getting all those austerity cuts. And that's really kind of how we think it's going to look. So I'll ask Ryan if he can just kind of walk us through some of the basics that we're looking at right now, given that there's a lot up in the air thanks to what the state has put out.
Okay, so when we approached Friday, which was really a day where we were trying to bring a lot of things together for our actual budget document for the board, we were approaching it, since we had no QBE estimate, we were approaching it from the place of what we received as our FTE count and funding allotment and our midterm adjustment, which did include a decline in QBE revenue just because our FTE had declined. And then we're plugging in certain assumptions. We knew we get an equalization grant, which goes to lower wealth districts in order to kind of equate their taxing ability to use tax revenues. But in that grant, we had received information that gave us a number of what that calculation would be for us. So going into the day, we took some revenue out of QB, we added some just based off of what our best guess was moving forward. And even in that vein, we had some options. It wasn't looking too bad. We also scaled back the title ad valorem tax because we make the assumption that at least for several months, car sales would be down continuing into the next year when you're looking at July through September. So we tried to create a conservative budget estimate from which to work from. And as Mr. Smith mentioned, that morning when it hit the headlines in AJC and we received the memo, 14%, if that 14% is applied just straight through the QB formula, through the equalization grant, through everything that we get from state dollars, it's well over $9 million. The CARES Act money, which you may have seen some information on, is about $3.7 million. So initially, when we were going into our budget day, we were going to think about CARES Act money in terms of if any of our assumptions on that day were incorrect. So if we did not get as much property tax, if we did not get as much title ad valorem tax, or if the state cut us, that would be a buffer in the assumptions we made to go ahead and present a budget to the board. Now, if you're taking that 14%, and the way they presented that 14% is really a worst case scenario. At least that's how I read it, just to be prepared. But when you take that, what you're really starting to talk about with that CARES money is basically a transfer of the CARES money over to the state. And I don't know if for Mr. Holmes and Ms. Cook, who were here during the recession, we had the stabilization funds that came down to us, and it was basically an in and out. It went on our QBE formula. You had a minus with our austerity reduction, and right below it, you had the plus with the stabilization money plugging it. So effectively, stabilization money came to us, but really it just replaced state dollars. So the state was able to keep more of those funds. So I think the conversation around the CARES money is now changing from truly being kind of a stimulus that plugs some holes, such as our nutrition, to now, is it going to be plugging the hole for state appropriations? But you can see if it's over $9 million and that CARES money is only about 3.7 million, that's a big gap. So part of our discussion and line of thinking goes to what we just talked about in terms of stopping our spending as it sits now, being under in payroll, being under because of fuel utilities, being over because of our current revenue collections, and effectively saving that all in our fund balance, and honestly just designating that piece of fund balance for the next year when we do have where we would have a better revenue estimate, but basically potentially using that fund balance to offset the need really as a stopgap for at least a year, to offset the need to try to do anything drastic. Now, you'd still have a big gap between a $9 million number and the CARES money plus any fund balance we may carry over. It'd still be a big gap, but again, I'm hoping that that's a very high or conservative estimate. And if we could get it anywhere close on that gap, then it's potentially an opportunity. This board has been prudent for years in building a fund balance and reserve. And our fund balance is around a little over 19% of our operating budget. And so that may come into play and play off as an advantage for this system of not doing drastic things in preparation for this. Again, what that would look like is as a request of additional fund balance, but that's why you have fund balance, is to maintain the integrity of your instructional program during turbulent times. So I'm hoping that we're in a financial situation where, while it's going to be scary and we may have to look at holding off on some things and some cuts, that we'll also get to use the strength we built up over time to have Griffin-Spalding kind of stand out in front and say we're not going to do drastic things to our employees.
Ryan, I have a question. The CARES Act, Mr. Smith, you may be able to answer this too. The webinar we did last Thursday with GSBA, that was the CARES Act that they talked to us about, as I recall. Is that correct?
Talk about that. We did talk about that a little bit, yes.
Right, and each system in the state gets part of that. Oh gosh, I can't remember how many $1 million it was, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
Over
400.
How is that money allocated to each system? What percent? What would Griffin-Spalding get compared to maybe a smaller or a larger system? How is that calculated?
Well, the full amount of money that came to the state was somewhere around, I believe, about $460 million or so, something like that. The state was able to keep 10% of that off the top
Right.
as kind of a rainy day fund, or to use for specific grants to systems in the fall or winter of the coming year, as they see the impact of this whole issue on school districts. They're also able to keep things 0.5% for administrative costs. That left $411 million to support Georgia's school districts. And that money, while it's not Title I dollars as such, it is still federal dollars, but not Title I. But the allocation will follow the basic Title I allocation method. So it's kind of that same percentage of this pot that we would get out of Title I. So our number is a little bit over $3.7 million. And of course, Title I is based somewhat on your free and reduced lunch population, your need in the system like that. So it would depend not just on being a smaller district, but on districts that have higher or lesser needs in terms of money for disadvantaged students.
Okay.
So we're getting 3.7 million out of it is our allocation piece. And the state board did approve that at, I believe, their last called meeting.
How different were our latest FTE numbers as opposed to the one before?
I believe the FTE for March was down what, Ryan, do you remember?
I don't know. I want to say it was in the 80 range.
That's what some less than 100.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have a question with, typically we approve our budget before July 1. With the state not meeting right now and not until June, do we have any leeway on that, or do we still have to have a budget?
There's two avenues you can take. One is to get a budget done by June 30. I realize that there may be some amendments that need to be made as better information comes along in succeeding months. And that's really what we would like to be able to do, is get a budget prepared, realizing that we are doing something with estimates, and as better information comes, we can amend that later on. The other thing that you can do if you don't have a budget is do what they call a continuing resolution. And it allows you to continue spending in the month of July at 1/12 of the budget from the prior year. So you continue spending at the same basic level that you were spending in the prior year. And some will choose that method if they can't get a budget far enough down the road.
So, Mr. Smith, I'm pretty sure Sue heard it as I did. Hartley was